Warning: the following show is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello, we are live last Friday of May.
Oh,
Yes, sir. Coffee with the Johns.
my favorite month.
It's your favorite month. It's your birthday month.
Yeah, I know. That's why.
We got some interesting articles today that we're going to be covering and some news about the real estate market. We got a lot going on. We have Warren Buffett getting into the real estate construction side, so that's going to be interesting to go over. We have one of the biggest hedge fund managers has jumped into the Bitcoin game as well after pretty much always talking about, it was a very bad idea. He wasn't in favor of Bitcoin. Now all of a sudden he's investing in it. We're going to be talking about how investors are snatching up a lot of single family, which is causing a lot of the shortage of properties in the United States. San Antonio has record home values. I mean, we have a lot going on, and one of the biggest topics we're going to be hitting on today is the hybrid work from home model. It doesn't seem to really be working for a lot of people. So we're going to be talking about that. Make sure you share this on social. Invite your friends. Let them know what we do. Let them know
All
what
of
this
them.
is about.
Every single one of them.
Because this is, what we do, right? Like we want to make sure you are understanding the trends that are developing. You are understanding what's happening in the market. So when you are thinking about doing marketing, doing investing, doing anything, you are much better prepared. So with that being said, I am your host, John Barbera, and with me, as always, is co-host extraordinaire himself, Mr. John Barr. How's it going,
effects.
sir?
Haven't been a while. Good.
Good?
Yeah.
How was the birthday? Good birthday week? Good birthday month?
Oh, it was on last Saturday, so was last week the birthday week or this week the birthday week?
Well, it would probably be last week, but I see here.
It's a 2 week.
Yeah, alcohol is still in your system.
It's on the weekend. It just goes.
Well, the
for
week
2 weeks.
is Monday to Sunday, so.
Or week is within 7 days of before or after.
Oh, here we go with your interpretation of facts. So
that was good.
I take it there was a lot of drinking.
No, not really.
But yeah, it's some fun time, right?
Yeah.
Did some kayaking and
I did some kayaking with my family on Saturday morning down the river. It was drizzling and raining, but it actually wasn't that bad because
you were on the water anyway.
Yeah, we were on the water. It wasn't 30 degrees. It wasn't like 50 degrees outside, so it was still like 75, 80 degrees. So it was like the rain coming down. It was like it was nice. It actually wasn't that bad. So we kind of expected it. So we just wore clothes that could get wet, and we just kind of kayaked up the river and back down.
And you're what, 32 now?
32. Yep.
Bones starting to hurt a little more, a little harder to get up in the mornings.
Oh, I think that's more due to
more oatmeal for breakfast.
I think that's more due to jiu-jitsu and rugby in college more than anything.
Using our bodies as a playground.
Yeah. It's like
kind of catches up to you as you get older, huh?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I notice I'm sitting here. I'm like, man, my freaking hands, my fingers hurt. Why? And I'm like, oh yeah. I was like,
yeah. All right, so we got a lot of topics. Anything that you would like to kind of kick it off with, or you want me to pick? What are you in the mood for?
I mean, this is a real estate business show, and we are a real estate company.
Yeah.
So I think it's only fair to start off with real estate. And it's one that is I was having a conversation with our bookkeeper and stuff the other day about what interest rates are doing for investment properties, that they're getting into the high 4s. And he's like, or his friend sent him a property. He goes, man, that seems really high. Let me send it to a few other people that I know to see if that's right. And he goes, yeah, man, investor properties are getting high. And I think it's due to the fact that more investors are buying. I mean, this is speculation. More investors are buying property, and that's not what the politicians want. They want home ownership to buy, basically, and who has cash. It's people that were successful or had jobs or in tech or anything like that had assets during the pandemic that didn't lose their jobs, so they gained all the money. And now they're going and buying properties, so people that are trying to get started in their lives can't afford them. Millennials, lower middle class, it's outpricing home ownership and turning them more into long-term rentals. And it goes to show that, like, I mean, case after case after study shows that home ownership does lead to a wealthier, more secure future than renting your entire life on a
My thing-
on a nationwide basis.
So my thing on that, I don't know if you were gonna get into an article. That was kind
No,
of
well, I
like
was
the
going
point
to
of
lead
it.
into an article,
But like my thing with that, even with that premise, is that I mean, investors buy distressed properties. So
well, not necessarily.
okay, so that's what I'm curious about because you know most investors are looking for some distressed property that you want to build some equity, right? You want to have some equity in the property, you cash flow, stuff like that, right? You want to get a deal. You want to get something that makes sense. So, and then you have your retail market that are buying retail ready houses.
Well, I think
so how is this?
I think you have two different classes of investors. You have
Okay.
retail investors, and then you have real estate investors like ourselves. As like you have the people that are like, I want to go buy that have cash, and it's like I don't want to invest in stocks, I don't want to invest in this stuff, and I believe in the overall long-term appreciation of real estate. So I don't care if it cash flows. I have plenty of cash to sustain the asset, so I'm just going to go buy a retail-ready house, taking
Right.
that off the market from somebody else. They want to buy a house, they can buy and immediately rent. They don't want to do rehabs. They don't want to mess with stuff. They want to be in the asset class of housing because they believe in the appreciation. I mean, just look at it. We're 10, 11 months of double-digit appreciation here in San Antonio, and basically the entire nation has seen double-digit appreciation year over year. To where it's like, if I just bought the house, yes, there's some sales and transaction costs involved with that, but you look at it, it's like, all right, you bought this $250,000 house. It's 10% year over year. It's now worth $275,000. It's like, okay, you basically sold in a year and you still made your money back. So like over the long term, and that's just on the value of the house. That's not including any cash flow you get from it. So overall, it's a very good diversifier, and they're not wanting to go through the retail stock market. They want to buy houses from there. So I think that's what this article is kind of portraying, and what you're asking, like, we're buying distressed properties. I think it's a small subset of people buying distressed properties like we do, because it'd be very hard to get that data of who's buying a true distressed property, to where if it's on the MLS or on Zillow or anything, that's where they get the bulk of their data from. And those are retail ready houses, not today, not like they were back 10 years ago when they were flooded with properties. And there's no good way to, there wasn't enough investors buying property.
All right, well, get into the article, because then I want to see what their stats are.
This is an article from Housing Wire. It says, after 3 straight quarters of declines, home purchases by investors rose 2.7% year over year in the first quarter of 2020, making the first period of growth since the COVID-19 pandemic began, per a new study from Redfin. Looking to take advantage of the hot housing market and soaring stock market, investors bought about 1 of every 7 U.S. homes in the first quarter. Investors' purchases of high-priced homes jumped 19.8% year over year, and that's kind of what really reframed my mind. Is like, high-priced homes. Investors are buying high-priced homes. For us, it's like investors like us don't buy high-priced homes. We buy for cash flow. But from this perspective, it's like, no, these type of investors are buying high-priced homes at the bigger clip of anything else. So that was in the first quarter. By comparison, investors' purchase of mid-price homes rose 12.7%, and low-price homes declined at 9.2%. Sales of luxury homes specifically rose 41.6% year over year in the first quarter of 2021, crushing sales of affordable homes, 7% increase in mid-priced homes at 5.9%. Middle to lower income homes are thinking twice about selling their homes for fear of not being able to afford new homes, the chief economist Fairweather said for Redfin. So that's where I was just saying, it's like investors aren't buying low-priced homes or anything like that from your retail side. But the article does leave Trey into, all that being said, investors still gobble up the largest share of low-priced homes in the first quarter. As well, 1 of every 5 low-priced homes sold in the U.S., 20.8%, was purchased by an investor. So your lower entry-level price homes are still being purchased at 1 of every 5, and they're 1 of every 7 of the entire market, but they're starting to trend towards higher priced homes where the inventory actually is. So
now with this data, like, I'm trying to rationalize a little bit, like, of what they constitute as an investor. Like, are these second homes, or are these actual like investment properties that they're buying that they're turning to an Airbnb or a rental or something?
Well, these are purely investors, because second home is a completely different class of mortgage versus investor. So if you have an investment loan, because you can put 10% down on a second home.
Yeah.
Investment, you have to put 20% down. So these are investment properties that they're putting at least 20% down in order to purchase. So you have different classification of investor, second home.
So these are legit investors
retail,
then. Well, I mean,
that's what it seems like anyways.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it does make sense because as we talked about before, and we keep seeing, it's like as the dollar keeps getting devalued, you are looking at what is going to retain my value, and a home is, a house,
I mean,
like
just
it's just
real
assets.
assets. So
Yeah.
stocks, bonds, or not bonds, but like stocks, real estate, gold, physical. Like you look at cars, they're appreciating.
Bitcoin,
Art.
Dogecoin.
Yeah. I mean, well, time will tell. Time will tell on that one how that's going to work out. But your tried and true areas that are like a physical, actual pieces of ownership, something that produces some form of
Right.
value. So like Bitcoin doesn't produce any value. Same thing with kind of like gold, but gold's been around for so long that it's saying like, hey, as it's been kind of proven that as time goes, gold continues to rise in relation to other its currencies and things like that. So that's where I think people are flooding to. That's where I was saying like people that have money, like from the East West Coast, high price or high income earners, like they have extra cash. It's like, man, I'm already maxing out 401ks, I'm already maxing IRAs out, and it's like I have extra cash around.
Mhm.
What do I invest in? It's like, well, real estate's been hot. It is hot. It's on all the headlines about how hot it is, how much the values are going up. So it's bringing people in. I'm just saying, like, look, I got an extra 50, 60 grand. Like, I can go buy an investment property from the retail market and then just stick a tenant in it. And even though I break even or get a little negative, it's that appreciation that I'm going after. So,
Woo. Man, I always, every time I hear that, I just get goosebumps of when people say, I don't care that I don't cash flow. I'm just going for the appreciation, because it's like, don't get me wrong. If you have plenty of money in the bank after you made that bet, by all means, good for you, right? You have the money, you understand, you're savvy. But where it gets me nervous is when you're having people that they don't have extra funds, they don't have extra savings, and they're already negative, counting on appreciation to save their ass. Like, yes, right now, for what we see, I mean, we don't see appreciation stopping anytime soon, right? But if it does, what do you do then? Not only are you negative cash flow, but you're over leveraged. So it's like, boy, you're getting yourself in a
I mean,
it's
and
a hell
that's
of a
where
predicament.
we had that comment that somebody said that bidding up prices and stuff that you had me comment on YouTube the
Yeah.
other day. And it's like, well, you're looking at it for the wrong reason then. It's like if you're buying like, oh, prices are just so expensive, I don't want. It's like, okay, if you can't afford it, then yes, you can't afford it. But it's one of the things that people are like, but housing prices are too high, I don't know if the prices are going to go down. It's like, well, then you're looking at it from the wrong reason. Like real estate as a homestead is not an investment, like until you sell the house later on. It's a liability. So you have to look at, can I afford that liability for the next 5-10 years with the cost of everything considered as far as repairs, maintenance, property tax increases, insurance increases. You need to run your budget from that aspect. And most people look at it as like, well, I just want the investment aspect of it because I can sell it in 2 years and it's worth more, make money. It's like, yeah,
Ideally.
yeah, ideally. Yeah, it's like, but ask somebody that bought in 2007 how long it took for them to recoup their equity. Even here in Texas, it still took them 12 years, or not 12 years, till 2012 of 4 or 5 years to start breaking even and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To cover sales costs, because the sales costs of real estate are drastically high comparatively to other asset classes, where it's like anywhere from 8 to 10% to sell your house, plus any kind of repairs and maintenance you need to do in order to sell that house. So it's very expensive.
Yeah, and
So
I
it's very
mean that
dangerous to
kind
not-
of goes into a article that I had on here that I wasn't sure. It didn't. I mean, it had some interesting data, but not that much. But to tie into it a little bit, they're saying that 64% of millennials have regrets about buying their current home, and once you actually look at the article, it's not really 64%. It's like 14% regret this part, 10% regret that part. You know what I mean? Like, it's just different little areas of this process. But pretty much what the article was saying is like right now, buying a home is become like a leap of faith. People are buying houses sight unseen. They're bidding on houses that they're not even quite sure, they haven't taken the time. They're waiving inspections. They're waiving appraisals. They're waiving all these things.
Periods.
They're waiving option periods. So a lot of people they think like that's the hardest part. It's like once the high of actually buying the house wears off, they're like, then they start looking at the house and they start realizing like there was a small percentage of people, about like, I think it was like 14%, regretted where the house was located. Like that's That you can't change that. You
Oh,
know what I
well,
mean?
it's
Like
also
that is
one of the
not
thi-
something
yeah.
that you can just say. It's not like, hey, I really regret. I don't know the color of this kitchen or some. No, it's like you're
Oh,
regretting
for
the
sure. I
location of the
mean, I
home.
know when I bought my first house in 2013 that I lived in, and where I worked, it was like that was one of the things. Like, I wanted easy access to a highway from where I worked out in Bernie because I was commuting 15, 20 miles
Mhm.
outside of the city. To whereas like I want to make sure it's easy access to it, um, to that road because I don't want to sit in traffic forever. I don't want to sit there waste 30 minutes of my day just trying to make it to a highway. And I think that's a huge aspect about housing that people don't take into account when they're driving to house to house to house to house to house to house. They don't, and right now it's like they don't have the time to say, I like this house. Let me see what it's like during traffic hours. What's during during rush hour? How is it to get to the grocery store during certain times of day that I want to get to? You don't have that. It's like you have to jump and just buy it and be like, well, I have to take what I can get because that's it.
Yeah.
Or you really have to focus on a specific area and then have to say like, all right, I really want this area because of its location. I like that location. Where do I buy now, or what do I buy? And it's like I just got to buy whatever I can get. Or you're sitting there just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting,
Right.
and then that fear of missing out, watching prices rise and rise and rise, and worrying about getting bid out. To where it's like, yeah, it's a very very difficult time to be a retail home buyer
Yeah.
today.
And then in the article, they also said among all homeowners, including millennials, the most common regret is underestimating how much the maintenance expenses and other hidden costs associated with buying and owning a home are. And this says roughly about 21% of millennials regretted that. And that is something like when people say, I've always had the argument because people always ask me, why do I rent versus own? And like I tell them, like, you don't understand what it is to own a home. Like owning a home, because they look at it very basically like you have your mortgage, you're building equity, you're paying it down. It's a good investment, right? It's like, first of all, it's not an investment until I actually sell and realize that actual growth that I've had in the house. And then even then, is the house updated enough or in the conditions to warrant that equity that's been built up based on the neighborhood, right? So it's more money you got to put in. For homeowners, sometimes that is a lot more money than we would spend because we have the contractors, we know the materials, we know the process, we know exactly what to put in a home to keep the cost as low as we can, right? So they don't understand the process that's like actually owning a home, things happen to it, right? Your water heater breaks, your AC goes out, you need this maintenance, you need that maintenance. Next thing you know, you're like, holy crap, anything that goes wrong, especially right now, it's like it's costing me probably like $500, $1,000 to fix.
Yeah.
Because most homeowners, what do they got to do? They got to call somebody. Who are they going to call? Not the Ghostbusters, but they're going to call, they're going to go on
Well, so where did
Google.
I go? They go to Angie's List. They go to those types of investors that do cost significantly more. To where like,
Yeah.
hey, I can get a new
Contractors.
AC. Yeah, I can get a new AC stalled for depending on the size, anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000. To where, hey, you go to some other places and it could get a little warm there.
No, so anxious to drink it.
That they're gonna pay $10,000, $12,000 of roofs. I mean, my God, you pay like 10, 12 grand for a new roof. That's like I can get the whole same roof done for $4,500. Like when it comes to insurance aspects of it, so you see
Or
those kind of
even what
discrepancies.
we've seen personally is when people have had their foundations fixed, right?
Oh God,
And they're like,
yeah.
"But I already got my foundation fixed," and and they paid 35 grand for it. I was like, "Oh," and they like, I put 35 grand. I'm like, I get you paid 35 grand for it, but I would have paid 8. You know what I mean? Like, and the same. I had this one seller that he says, I just put these brand new windows in. They cost me $9,500. And I was like, they cost me like 14. I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not gonna pay you more just because you overpaid because you
the
hired a
aspect
Google
I've had
contractor.
I've had conversations with people
You know?
like what is it? I was talking with somebody and they'd put an offer on a house and the appraisal was way off from what it came. He's like, yeah, I just don't think they took into effect that they put new doors and windows in the house and they just done the foundations. Like none of that matters to to the appraiser. Like it's the fact that you can. I remember having the conversations like, so you're telling me I could have plywood siding on a house next to someone with nice brick stucco, something like that, and those houses could be of equal value. He goes, exactly, unless you can prove a actual difference in the homes where it's like, hey, this house over here had plywood and the only thing different was the plywood siding, or just let's call it the T111, the cheapest stuff you can find as far as siding. And the house next door had this, and they are exactly the same. And this one sold less, and it was the only difference. And I can find that difference across the neighborhood, saying like it is definitely the siding that is causing that. Then I can discount the property for that. The windows, the roof, anything like that. So those don't take into account. They have that basically you have a condition aspect that you can adjust on an appraisal. And the condition has to involve the condition of the home, not saying, oh, because you have new windows, we're going to give extra value for those windows. No, it's like we can give you a condition adjustment, but just because you have new windows and the other house doesn't warrant a house condition being improved on a grand scale.
And as you know, I have new neighbors, and we were trying to actually buy that house before the new neighbors moved in, because the house was in really bad conditions. It had major foundation issues. It needed to be updated. It needed work. It needed to be bought by an investor. So the owner of the house decided to leave it as a wedding gift to his daughter. And I was like, man, you hate your daughter. They're fixing up the house, and I've told them that you got to start with the foundation. I mean, I can throw out every cliche out there about a strong foundation, but let's bypass all the cliches. You got to fix your foundation, because everything above it just is not going to matter. They obviously can't. They can't afford the foundation repair, right? So they've been fixing the rest of the house, everything. They've had plumbing issues like 2 or 3 times already. And I'm like, you're going to continue to have plumbing issues. The house is not supported properly. The water, the way the whole street goes, like all the water from my neighbor's house, my house, everything dumps on their house. So I'm like, you're having, every time when it rains, like you're having all the water just sit on your foundation, like around your foundation, everything. And like, you need to put like either guttering. And I'm telling them all these things. And they're just, it's one problem after another they keep having. They're like, man,
especially the way your roof pitches, and it's only like 10 feet to the next house. So it's like it's just right there, and there's a fence. There's no grass. There's no tree. There's a tree that covers it, so you couldn't grow grass.
No,
and it's just a stop.
It's just a nice little freaking waterfall right into their foundation, and you know, they're like, this house has just become such a money pit. And I was like, but that's the thing. It's like that's what people don't understand about home ownership. People think, oh, it's an investment. You know, it's something that I'm gonna build equity. I'm gonna have forever. Blah blah blah. No.
Well, I mean,
like you gotta, and then I'm not saying don't own a home by all means. What I'm saying is like you gotta factor all these things in. Mm-hmm. Like it's not just I qualify for a house, so let me buy a house.
No, I agree. I mean, and then people start with the wrong side because yes, the foundation is the most expensive thing. Well, I can't afford to fix that. I was like, well, then you can't afford the house because it's gonna eat you alive down the road. As far as like, so, and then given they were gifted the house, they could sell to an investor, and with price appreciation, they might actually do all right in the investment. But it's like that's a pure gamble. That is just like.
Well, the thing is, like the more money they're putting in, the more they're losing, because all that money, like I told them, they were doing new floors, texturing inside, painting, all this. I was like, as an investor, I'm gonna come in and be like, yay, good job, but I gotta rip up all the floors because I gotta fix the foundation.
Yeah.
Fixing the foundation, I'm going to crack all the walls.
Well, the thing is, we fixed the house that you live in now. Like, we fixed that one up, and it's right next door. And we had to lift the entire house, and we had to basically redo all the plumbing. We had a void underneath that house. I remember that you can stand up in how deep it was because of the way the streets were and how we had to gut it out underneath there with dirt just for the fact that it's like we had to get to the plumbing. And it ran from all over parts of the house to fix it. So it's like, all the flooring is trash. And just like the house that we're doing right now, that we bought it, and the seller less than a year ago fixed all the plumbing underneath the house, redid all the plumbing. And now it's like, we got to go back and redo all the plumbing because the entire house had 47 piers, and we had to lift from, I think it's 6 inches from the back of the house to the front. And all the freaking plumbing was on the back side of the house, so it ripped all of that stuff. And when we lifted it, and now it's like, well, now you gain no value in the house by spending $5,000 fixing all the plumbing, because I just spent $15 lifting the foundation, and now I got to go back and spend another $5,000 fix all the plumbing underneath again. And it's like you spend
and you don't get extra value for fixing the plumbing. It's just like, well, you're supposed to have a house with working plumbing, so you're not going to get extra value for that.
Well, it's also one of the things that I think people look at, that it's like, well, I'll afford the foundation later, so I'll fix this stuff. I can afford to fix these things now. It's like, No, you should be saving up to fix the foundation first before you go texturing, painting, putting new cabinets, kitchens. Because like people don't understand like how jacked up a foundation can really be, especially if you don't understand. Like I get it if you kind of like us and say, hey, I know I'm gonna need to fix that corner of the house over there eventually, like Grand Tilly.
Yep.
You know what? I don't need to spend the money to fix that now because I can fix all this stuff and it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Because it's in two opposite corners of the house where there's no plumbing. It's not that big a deal. It's not going to mess with anything.
Yeah.
Too much.
It was such a small deviation. It wasn't
Yeah.
6 inches like we've
Yeah.
had on other ones.
Yeah,
And then also,
exactly.
like, I mean, a big thing to take in mind is that we've had some people criticize the way that we buy our rentals because we buy houses that are at pretty much flip numbers because we do this level of rehab to keep as a rental. And people say, oh, you don't know how to invest in rentals. Like, I beg to differ because, again, the amount of money you're going to spend on maintenance because you're not fixing these things are going to kill any and all cash flow you're going to have. Plus, you're going to piss off any tenants you have in there because with all these problems. Like, if you're going to keep a house long term, whether it's homestead or rental property, you have to make sure the major components are fixed. You got to make sure they're working. That's why do we keep the majority of the houses that we do a massive renovation in? Because it's like, we know we just did everything new. We did foundation, we did plumbing, we did roof, we did everything. That's like, our risk factor goes way down now. So,
well, I mean, not just that too. It's like, well, and it's kind of fun to now we're getting to kind of a scale in rental housing on the number of properties we own and manage that it's like, you can start playing with these numbers. Like, all right, if I ignore these repairs, how does my tenant respond? Do they move out? Do they stay? And it's like our turnover has been significantly low. And even though we're raising rents on pretty much all of our tenants that are coming to renewals, but it's because we do provide. It's like, hey, you have a problem, you let me know. I get somebody out right away. So where it's like, I look at that, especially because I rent too. And it's like, if somebody takes longer to get something there, if like, man, if you really don't give a shit about this, then I don't give a shit about this either. And I was like, so that deferred maintenance, that leak, that problem you're hearing about, not that worried about it. You can figure that out later when I move out. So it's like you let them, give them the ability to think it's like kind of like their own home. So
yeah. So you want to talk about the San Antonio?
Okay, yeah. So moving along with like values, San Antonio. Here's how San Antonio record home value growth stacks up to other cities. And I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this, on what might be driving this. So San Antonio home values are rising at record pace, but they still lag behind the growth seen nationally, according to a new report from Zillow Group. And Zillow obviously has a few numbers that they can compare with. So Zillow found that the typical single-family home in San Antonio is now worth $233,000, up 10.4%, or $22,000 since last April and 1.6% since March. The platform found that this growth to be the largest in the metro area since tracking such data, which goes back to 1996. It also found that 23% of homes in the San Antonio metro are selling above a list price. San Antonio housing rally is consistent with the market conditions nationwide, with 39 of the top 50 metros seeing double-digit increases in typical home values. That annual growth for a typical U.S. home is 11.6%, the highest since 2005. So now looking at Texas, Austin was up 25.5% year over year, which I was just like, oh my God. Dallas, Fort Worth, 11.9%, San Antonio up 10.4%, and Houston up 9.1%. Zillow expects the momentum to continue over the next year with 11.8% overall growth through April 2020. And that's what I think you were talking about earlier, why retail investors are jumping into the market, because they see this projected growth. It's like, dude, you're going to go up another 10%. I'm going for it. So inventory is down 39.2% from last year, which homes on the market for just 8 days before going under contract. Zillow economist Jeff Tucker cautioned against comparing the current housing market to the scene in the last run-up to the mortgage crisis in the mid-2000s, saying this market is built on strong fundamentals and that a housing bubble is not likely. He said that homes will remain scarce until existing homeowners feel more comfortable selling or prices rise enough to restore balance. And my question is, how long can price continue to rise like this? Where is all this money coming from for these homes? I mentioned I remember mentioning this to you yesterday, and you said you had like some topics or some thoughts on that of like what's going to continue driving this market at these high prices like this. And I mean, kind of taking pieces from articles where he said housing is the economist said that homes will remain scarce until existing homeowners feel more comfortable selling or prices rise enough to restore balance. And then you had the other people saying like the other article that your middle income housing people like, yeah, I want to trade up, but I'm afraid I can't go find a house, so I'm not selling.
Right.
Like what breaks that restores that kind of balance that people can start moving around?
Well, and this is again an opinion. I can't see prices stop rising as much if we keep dumping more money into the market. Because what that's going to keep doing, the more money you dump, the more that money has to go somewhere. It has to find, and usually it finds assets where you have the asset bubble. The more money you dump, the more money people are going to have available, the more they're going to have to spend. People don't, we always talk about how Kiyosaki, if you've heard of Kiyosaki and read Rich Dad Poor Dad, he always says savers are losers because the more they devalue the dollar, the more your savings is worth less and less. So how are prices going to stop rising then? If you keep dumping more and more money into the market, when are prices going to stop?
Okay, so dumping money into the market. It's like but I agree with like the stimulus packages and stuff like that because I agree. It's like, hey, all these people have been locked up for a year and a half. They now have got extra stimulus checks. They kept their jobs, so they weren't going out and spending because they couldn't go travel. They couldn't go on vacation. They couldn't go do anything. So their bank accounts grew above their normal rates. And now when people we all know aren't financially savvy to where it's like, hey, I got extra money, so I need to go find something to spend this on. So now when they're having like 5, 6, 7, 10 grand, they're like, man, I can go buy a house.
Yeah.
But so far we haven't heard about any like direct to person stimuluses that have had any kind of significant windfall or traction of like paying people more money.
Well, let's look at what it is. Let's don't look at so much like the government data, right? Let's look at what is. What is that we go to grocery stores, we go to the gas station, everything is costing more, right? That's inflation. Everything is costing more. Now we're starting to see more and more jobs increase how much they're paying to get more people back to work because people are not willing, wanting, whatever it may be, whatever, even that has become a political conversation of, of getting a job. But wherever you fall, there's not enough people wanting to go to work. So you don't have enough people wanting to go to work. So it's increasing wages in a lot of areas because it's like, shit, we got to pay more because we need to fill these roles because if not, we can't grow, we can't scale, we can't deliver, we can't do any of these things. So you have people making more money, things are costing more money. I mean, as more money, that's how the money is hitting the market. That's how the money is hitting the people. It's hitting it. It's kind of like that top-down approach of what they always do with tax cuts, right? When they do tax cuts, hoping for a top-down approach is that you cut the taxes for the big corporations. Therefore, they make more money. Therefore, they pay their people more money. They make more money. They spend more. That's supposed to be the theory behind it.
But now they kind of flipped it to where they cut the labor at the bottom and paid more at the top, and that's forcing the trickle down effect to go like, hey, you got these big tax breaks, you got all this extra money, you got these stock bonuses or all this stuff. Your stocks have gone up. And it's like, and now the labor's like, I don't want to go to work for $15 an hour anymore or $12 an hour. It's like, I want more than that, and now I got cash to sustain my lifestyle for the next 6 months. Well, so it's like, and now like you look at how our capitalism and stock market quarterly reports, it's like your job is to increase your stock price. So it's like, well, we got to provide more value. We have all this stuff to where like an inventory sitting around actually costs you money, or not being able to go capture business. I mean, somebody else is capturing it, so it actually hurts you more. So I think that is something that
well, and then you also you got to look at, like we always talk about, let's say with real estate prices, it is location, right? It is local in a lot of areas. So you got to look at like Texas. We have more and more people every year, every day, every month, every week move into Texas. The more people go after a limited supply, the more that supply goes up, the cost of that supply. So when you're saying when a home price is going to go down or stable off, it's like it's going to depend. Maybe if you're in more of a rural city somewhere where nobody's moving there, people are maybe moving away from there, prices are probably going to stable off or go down in those areas much sooner than they will, like in San Antonio, Austin, Dallas,
Well, I
Houston.
mean, just the South. I was listening to Kathy Fetke this morning on her real estate 5-minute brief, and they said that properties in the South, like they grew faster than any other area than when you look at the regions, the Northeast, the South, Midwest, and the West. Right. And as I think it went, like the South was by far the biggest leader, and the economists, everybody's in like, it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to outpace the growth of every other region in the United States. Or it's just like, you have so many people moving there. You have like all the pandemic that you have all these high placed taxes in the areas like the Northeast and the West. And they're like, man, we're very fluent. We're wealthy. We're moving to Texas and Florida. Yeah. And that's why you see like the last census report showed that, like, where are people moving? Texas and Florida. Like, they are the two biggest winners, the two biggest economies that are gaining the most, like, to where it's going to be interesting to see over the next decade or two, to see our top four big producers, which is Texas and Florida, New York, and California. Like, very two different styles of living, very two political spectrums, very different ways they do business in those states. It's going to be interesting to see like where things are going to end up, because right now the trends are moving from those two states to the two other states.
And then also, like, kind of what ties in, and I'll jump into this other article now, is that what ties into how our home price is going to be affected and how it's based on location is, you talk about, this article was the unintended consequences of a hybrid work model. So the prevailing return to work hybrid model could turn to unintended disastrous consequences. Google, Microsoft, Citigroup, and Ford represent the gamut of companies that are offering employees the opportunity to work 2 or 3 days a week in the office, but also provide for a substantial amount of people solely working remotely. Here are just some of the time bombs, and I wanted to address each time bomb, and kind of we
time
can
bomb. Huh? A time bomb. I like that.
Did I just say that wrong?
No. Oh, like you're saying, like, here's the time bombs in that thing. Oh, you don't.
I'm already a little self-conscious about the way I speak English. Don't throw things out there like making me feel like I pronounced something wrong. Okay, it messes with my ego. Anyway,
wow.
But for both management and staff needed to navigate when returning to work at an office setting or continuing at home. So the old bait and switch trick. When a company says that you don't have to worry about working 5 days a week in the office, you like to believe it sincerely. Many people will want to go into the office after being stuck at home for so long. A couple of days would be nice. Would be a nice change. You can catch up with old friends and colleagues, enjoy the new experience, partake in the daily gossip, go out for lunch with some friends, and perhaps drinks after work and clients. As time passes, managers may start feeling stressed over supervising a widely distributed workforce. Instead of impromptu and serendipitous meetings, everything will need to be scheduled. You can imagine the annoyance after the 10th meeting in which the boss has to figure out where everyone is. So you have CEO of Washingtonian, Kathy Merrill. Merrill basically threatened her staff that if they didn't return to the office, their status would be changed from employees to contractors. So
that's a big savings right there for a company.
Exactly. So you have pretty much, and they say the old bait and switch. I don't think it's a bait and switch. We are going through it, and we're not a massive corporation that has, hundreds of employees, but we're going through it with the few people that we do have that were working from home. But we are seeing exactly what they're talking about. Even when they said, the serendipitous of having a meeting, impromptu meeting, because of something, a system or something's flawed. It's like, all right, let's have a meeting. Let's talk about this real quick. Where it's like, oh, well, nobody's here.
Yeah, and that's an easy thing to do. Like, you're like, hey, in a meeting, like, you're busy, you're working on something. A lot of times, like, I'm focused, I'm working on my thing, and then somebody walks in, because I saw this when I was working corporate. They were like, hey, we need to have a meeting about this and talk right now. And you're like, in the middle of this, but you can't ignore it because you're there in the office. But if it's a digital thing, you see this thing pop across, you're like, I didn't see it.
Exactly.
I ignored it. Oh, they called you at your computer. Like, well, I was in the bathroom when I missed the call and I didn't see that you missed the call. And so you have very easy ways to hide from a digital platform or on through a digital space that you can't get away from in the office.
And this conversation is also for everybody watching as well. I would love to hear what you think about each one of these things regarding, like, maybe if you're going through it yourself or if you know somebody or what your thoughts are on this. So the next time bomb is invasive surveillance. So the manager grows suspicious why a phone call, text, or email wasn't answered promptly. It could start out as innocuous technology and softwares used to keep track of everybody. Studies are showing that 1 in 4 people will be looking for a new job. The manager may believe that the person is busy interviewing. Slowly but surely, software will be used to closely monitor the activities of the staff. Employers have increased their usage of monitoring software during the pandemic. According to Gartner, about 75% of conversations at the office may be recorded and assessed by 2025. So this is a recent study by ExpressVPN indicated that nearly 80% of managers utilize softwares to track employees' performance and or online activities. This includes monitoring internet histories, the amount of time spent on websites, apps used, screen monitoring, and real-time chats and emails. So, and this is another area, right? Because now you say, employees say, oh, that's invasive and all that. But for the manager, for the owner, whoever's managing the people, it's like, maybe, well, why is this task taking so long? Why did I send you a message and you haven't responded yet?
Well, yeah, they have all kinds of softwares now that they could track your mouse movement on your computers. And if it's a company-provided computer and it's part of there, it's like, yeah, like, then don't work there if you don't like being monitored. But it's like, I'm paying you a salary for your time.
Yeah.
And if you're not giving me the time that I'm paying you for, it's like, and I need to see that you're at, like, because you're not at the office, so I need to see, like, are you working? And it can't be just on job performance, because you look at, I mean, the high pressures of the corporate world where it's like, they want to know, like, hey, you got your job done, but can you do more? Can you do more? Can you do more? Like, they push you to keep you at that constant level of, like, trying to get the most efficiency out of you.
Yeah.
Where somebody's not working and it's like, well, can we get more out of our employees? And, like, how do we go about doing that? And that's, I think right now, that's going to be the next thing over the next 3 to 5 years of the employer-employee battle of like, hey, we got options to go work somewhere else, but the employer's like, but I'm trying to keep my workforce, but I need to track their ability to perform for my bottom line. Like, how is that going to shape?
Well, there was like another, because I kind of went down the rabbit hole of all this, and there was another article showing how so many of the people that are working from home are, it was, and there were large percentages. I mean, most of them were like over 30%. Of the people polled had this. So a lot of them were working 2 jobs on pay of 1 job, right? So during the time that they were being paid for 1 job to be there and be
double dipping on,
they're also doing another job simultaneously. Another one, other people were having sex more. They were drinking while they were working. They were taking naps. Because it's like, yeah, they send you a message or something, you didn't answer. It's like, oh, I didn't see it. Oh, I was busy. It didn't pop up. Oh, I don't know, my computer froze. A million things, and it's like,
so many. It's like,
how can they tell?
Yeah.
How can they? So then, as the manager, you're like, shit. You know what I mean? And you don't want to assume the worst in people, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, what the hell else do you assume?
Well, it's kind of the thing where, like, you're going to get like 10% bad actors that ruin it for the other 90% that do perform.
Yeah, well, but this was a lot higher than 10%.
Well, I'm sure, because it's like saying like, it's 3 o'clock and yeah, I'm still working. I'm going to pop a beer, have a glass of wine, whatever it may be for the next 2 hours. Because like, it doesn't affect your, I mean, let's say it doesn't affect your performance. Like 1 beer, 1 glass of wine, no big deal. But it's like, I'm sitting at home and there's, like you said, I'm just drinking. Just sitting there working, knocking things out. But it's just like, yeah, that's not quite good office policy, I guess. Like, oh, are people just getting hammered over here on a Tuesday afternoon? Like, but I mean, I guess it depends on the industry.
Yeah, I mean, not everything is a wholesale company.
Well, and also, like, I mean, that was pretty common in construction, though. It's like on Friday afternoons, like somebody, like there was always like somebody had like some whiskey or some beers or something, but it was always like after work hours, you just kind of have that camaraderie, like when things are closing up shop to get together.
Yeah, when things are closing up shop.
But like here, no, at lunch, I'm going to have this on a Tuesday.
So the next second time bomb is 2-tier class system. It's natural that the people in the office will form close-knit bonds. After all, this is hopefully a once in a multi-generational event. The office may have a celebratory feel to it. We are close to beating the pandemic. We're now entering a new and exciting era. There will be a sense of camaraderie and a spirit du corpus. Spirit du corpus.
Yeah, I don't know what that one was. I was like, I don't know.
I think like community. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, the remote workers will start feeling left out. It's not likely that a group of coworkers who got together for a quick brainstorming session will stop everything and think of the folks who should also be included.
Yep.
In the office, people sick and tired of Zoom calls won't be too enthused to lose the momentum and try to find others who should be on the call. They'll just proceed without them and say they'll catch up to speed later, which may not happen. So again, this is something that happens with us as well, where it's like we all of a sudden that like they talked about before just happen. We just happen to have a conversation, right? It just happened to form into something. And then it turns into like a small little brainstorming session of like, hey, we should do this, we should do that. Why don't we change this? And, just because it happens. That's what it is when people are in close contact.
That's the impromptu aspect of it that you just don't get digitally. To where, like, I mean, I had the topic on here last week with Jamie Dimon and Chase saying like,
you spoke to Jamie?
Yeah.
How's he doing?
He's doing all right. His knees are getting better. Do you know he had like some serious health issues? I didn't realize how much of like a tank that man was.
I wonder if he
had
has
like 2 knee replacements. He was in his office and all of a sudden like he heard a pop and like called his doctor and he's like, yeah, this is what I'm experiencing. I had to like, you need to go down, grab your assistant, get in the elevator, get in a car, and try to get here before you pass out. And he had like an aortic separation to where like he would have bled to death in a matter of like an hour or two.
My goodness.
And like he's like, yeah, I grabbed my assistant, walked the elevator, started getting super dizzy. And by the time I got to the car, I passed out in the car and I woke up out of surgery. Like by the time it popped, calling his doctor, he was on the operating table in less than an hour. And like he's like, it saved his life because like he had some type of like.
See, now what if that assistant was working from home?
Yeah, that assistant was working from home. He
would have been assed out.
Yeah, but he said like they've lost business. There's so many things about the banking business, the investment banking industry that it's like you can't do from home. Google's mentioned it that like that's the reason their offices are the way they are because they want people spending more time at work, enjoy being at work because they understand like. The creativeness of groups and what is that the synergy or like what is that stand for like I don't know but like the two parts are greater than the whole or something like that where like 1 + 1 = 3 instead of 2 that you have that back and forth when you have the group.
Are you doing Federal Reserve math now?
Exactly. But they see the benefits of having people in the office and communicating, having side conversations and that camaraderie, like they mentioned, that synergy that creates good business models that you can't get on a digital platform. I mean, even like Zoom still doesn't do as good a job as being in person.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, even if you try to rely on text messages, emails, phone calls, it's like, being in person technology has not yet been able to replicate until we get to like what was that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where like you sat down no it wasn't, it was Bruce Willis or somebody, but you like basically sat in a chair and your surrogate went out and interacted in the
surrogate?
world. Yeah, was that what it was called?
I think so.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like basically they haven't been able to come up with that where you just sit in a chair and then your mind and conscious walks off.
Yeah.
Like haven't been able to get rid of that.
I think, going back to that, like in our own personal space, we're implementing systems. We're doing things like sometimes these are new things, right? These are brand new things. So the people that are helping you implement it have a question. Well, now they got to message you. And let's say you stepped away from the computer, you didn't see the message. You come back, you get going with your stuff. Next thing you know, an hour went by, you just saw the message. During that hour, that person's been like, do I keep going? Do I wait? I don't know what to do. Should I just do it? Like, damn. So we just killed an hour. We killed productivity for what? You know what I mean? Like, it seems here we have Lorenzo. He put GPS is always on my laptop. We used to have cameras in our trucks. Can't even pick your nose in private. Big Brother is always watching us. So I don't know if you. It seems like you have a problem with the monitoring aspect of it, but it just gets to a point where it's like it you got to look at it from the business owner's point of view too. It becomes really hard. I think there are jobs that yes you can do from home because they're I guess they're more like task driven, where it's like there's not much that you need to connect with somebody on. You need to have conversations about. It's just more like almost like virtual errands, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're doing stuff that you're actually working and you're actually doing things in the business and everything, I think it really matters that you are in the business, you are in the company and connecting with people.
Yeah.
So then they talk about the next thing was a growing resentment. As remote workers start feeling left out, they'll lose motivation. Their boss may not know as they're not seeing the person every day. Of course, on the video calls, the person puts on a happy persona, and the boss is none the wiser. The work from homers may have lots.
Lost.
Oh yes, that's why it wasn't making sense. May have lost out on juicy assignments as they're out of sight, out of mind. They'll feel that they're always the last to know some important piece of news and information. After numerous perceived instances of neglect, they'll start a job research.
Job search, not a job research. We'll start a job search.
My eyesight is too many these words. I need to zoom them in. But they'll start a job search at home. It's easier. A search of a job boards on different computers that's not monitored. Networking with recruiters, former coworkers, and others will consume a large part of the day. So that growing resentment, right? That growing of like being neglected, being ignored, being pushed aside for whatever reason, because it's that out of sight, out of mind. Or sometimes it's just that tediousness of like, again, when we were talking about earlier, you and I start talking about something, then it's like the plans come in place, everything goes good. And then it's like, now I got to go connect and relay the whole freaking conversation all over again to this person, right? And I'm sure this person's going to have feedback. So now they have feedback, but then you're no longer in the room because you had to go do something else. So it's like, I'll give them my side, but not your side. And it's like, it becomes so much more cumbersome to have those situations, especially when you're in a growing company. I think if you're more of a stable company that the positions are very detailed and clear and everything, and it's pretty much the same repetitive task every single day, that's one thing. But when you're in a growing, scaling company, it's like things are changing consistently. On a continuous basis, they're changing. So it's like it matters. But yeah, they're saying growing resentment is another one of the issues. And then becomes, after all that, becomes pay issues is another time bomb. So another potential contentious issue is compensation. Some companies have said they'll pay a person who works remotely in North Dakota the same as a person who is in the headquarters in Silicon Valley. The cost of living and taxes between the two locations is enormous. The San Francisco person may be jealous and angry that he needs to pay a small fortune for a tiny apartment or house, whereas his North Dakota colleague is residing in a huge house with low taxes. You can imagine how frustrating a New Englander would feel in a freezing winter while their counterpart is living life on a sunny island in the Bahamas. As the companies start recruiting talent across the country and perhaps the world, it would spook off in-office and at-home workers. They'll worry that the company will purposely seek out applicants from lower-cost locations to save money and put downward pressure on overall compensation. They'll be afraid to ask for a raise when they know that they could be replaced with someone earning substantially less money.
Sounds like capitalism.
And we've already seen this with VAs, right? You have your virtual assistants. That's nothing new. Whether they're from the Philippines, India, wherever the hell they are, they're substantially cheaper, right? Because over there, $5 an hour goes a long way, right? Over here, that same job probably is more closer to the $25, $30 an hour, So it makes a huge difference when the performance is the same. So when you're saying, I'm an assistant or I do this role, I do that role, and it's like there are VAs that can do the same role and perhaps even do the same quality, and they're willing to work overnight because that's your work hours in the States. Like, yeah, it makes it kind of hard for you to, you know, hold your ground on a raise or something like that. And when we go back to real estate, how it's local, that's where affordability comes in. If you can work from home and whatever the model of the company is, and you can work from home, now you can move to wherever you want that's more affordable to live and still get paid like if you lived in Silicon Valley.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, I mean that's a real issue in a lot of areas. What do you think about that?
Um, it's very interesting. Like I said, over the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be interesting to see to where like I think a lot of these high priced areas are going to run into these issues to where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, company's job is to cut costs and grow revenue. I mean, that is the job of a company. Where it's like, where is your biggest cost in the company is the cost of your labor. Or like, hey, I got somebody willing, like, we don't need somebody living here in San Francisco. I can hire somebody living in North Texas for 20, 30 grand less, 40 grand less a year. They're living the same lifestyle. It's like, I don't need you. So where it's like, as an employer, you look at it, you feel for it. It's like, sorry, I
Or
just don't need it.
now I'm curious, like you say, they're making 20 grand less. That may not necessarily be the case. It may be that you're probably paying the same, but now do you think that you're probably going to get higher quality of worker because let's say in Silicon Valley, right? You're getting paid 60 grand a year. Let's say, I don't know if
I don't know
you
if you
know,
can live in that's
but
poverty in Silicon Valley.
right. So all right, let's call it 100 grand. I don't know. We'll throw a number. Let's call it 100 grand. But 100 grand job in that area is going to get you mediocre employee, right? Because you need a lot more to live in that area. So
Mhm.
the people that have the talent that you need want closer to maybe 150, right? To work there. But $100,000 employee in San Antonio or other cities, probably now you get the same quality that you would over here for 150, but you're getting them for 100 now. So it's not necessarily that you're paying less, but you're getting better quality employee. That's just a theory of mine, but like, do you
Oh,
think that makes sense?
yes, it makes complete sense. And you see these areas and these things happening to where like people are moving around. If they have, we just represented somebody that left Southern California to live in Texas and get significantly better a house, quality lifestyle, and everything because they can work remotely.
Yeah.
Or it's like, what does that do to an area that is ridiculously high in prices when people can leave, they can move outside, they can work? I mean, I think it's going to spread out costs, so you're not going to have these massive like expensive pockets. Or the industry is going to change. The type of jobs that go there are going to change, and things are going to move around. So, yeah, I think that makes complete sense of like the quality you get. Because I mean, we talked about it. Where who was it that Stripe said, "Hey, we're going to pay you a one-time 20,000." Was it they were going to pay them
Yeah,
20
20
grand,
grand.
but they were going to get also price salary reduction. But when you looked at the cost of living adjustment basis, like it's 40% higher to live in that area than a lot of other really nice metros.
Yeah.
And like, okay, you get 20 grand to move, but your salary drops 10 grand, 15 grand. It's like, well, your cost of the UK, you got a 10% price reduction, but a 40% jump in, or 40% reduction in cost of living. So it's like, you still gain 20 grand plus a 30% of your dollar going further.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, no, it really does make a difference. But I was reading some of the comments here, and we have Master Jedi that he says, instead of micromanaging and monitoring, hire better employees with work ethic. And then he says, brainstorming in person, i.e., side convos, are critical in growing companies. So yes, it is. You should be hiring better employees with work ethic and all that. But sometimes, how do you tell, right? You're hiring, and that I think that's where the concept comes of hire slow, fire fast.
yeah.
But sometimes I think it might be difficult to tell like what their work ethic is, especially like what if you hired somebody pre-pandemic, right? Now all of a sudden they've gotten used to working from home, their habits have changed because this has changed a lot of people. Like you want to think that you're, the best person or whatever, but it's like it's changed a lot of people, the way they act, their habits and stuff like that, where it's like now you got to deal with that new person pretty much that you hired before. They were a killer when they were in the office, but now that they have this work from home hybrid, all of a sudden you start seeing a different side. You know what I mean? That was developed during the shutdown, during the stay at home orders.
Yeah.
So I think it does make it harder. Not again, I'm not saying all jobs need to be a hybrid or even you got to come into the office, but there are certain jobs that it does require that camaraderie, that that connection, that in office appearance.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see how everything's adjust. Because I mean, I do agree there are gonna be some jobs that like, hey, you 100%, you don't need to be micromanaged and you get your job done. But then you're gonna have those other parts of like the business that's like, no, we need you here. But like, how do you tie those new reports, those new way to do business, a lot of new things that are going to come about from this last year as things start readjusting and moving things around. And it is kind of one of the things that is good for an economy to have these shakeups every now and then. Say, hey, everything got entrenched doing the old ways, and now the old way has completely been severed and broken, and now new things have to form, and the smaller, nimbler companies can adjust to those faster than the big boys.
And what I look at is I've always said this, that this is one of the biggest downfalls that wholesalers or real estate investors have, especially when they say, hey, I'm going all in on real estate. I'm quitting my job. I'm being a full-time real estate investor, and they work from home. I always see is that you're working from home, you have distractions, right? Even if even your home is quiet, it's your home. It's a different mindset that you have when you're there, right? You have your TVs right there. Maybe this is right. Maybe you can do this errand real quick or do that thing real quick that you wouldn't do if you were working. Mm-hmm. So now your focus is being pulled in different directions. And then the discipline that you got to have to stay on task and to have all these distractions that is your home around you and still be able to focus. Like, I think that kind of discipline, not many people have. Which is why so many wholesalers and investors that they decide to go full-time struggle so much, because their work efficiency goes way to hell down, right? Where we've had it with people. We have somebody right now that he's essentially officing out of here, right? Because he wants that camaraderie of being with people. Because he's like, if I'm home, I do less. Our videographer and our editor, Dre, there's a lot of times that he'll go to a coffee house. He'll go somewhere to get out. And his house is quiet. It's not like you're saying, oh, his house is full of kids. No. But he'll go because
that's a change of scenery.
Yeah, and just being around people, like, you need that, right? So it really affects and it really matters. So then you have managers' misconceptions is the final bomb, that employees may notice a cold aloofness as their direct manager gets irritated that they don't know what the underlining is doing all day long. And there's the belief that showing up to work, having good attendance, and putting in long hours is more important than results. Studies have shown that remote workers receive fewer promotions and lower bonuses compared to in-office peers.
How do they know that after only been doing it really a year?
Remote workers is nothing new. It's just tremendously increased. But sick days, days off, and vacations will be met with questions, as the old office mindset will think, you've been home for over a year. Why do you need the time off? It's just funny because I think about that too when I hear like after last year when everybody was home and the people that we knew were home, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, finally, we get winter break or something. I'm like, you've had a whole year break. What the hell you want winter break for? But and then they say major companies such as search sites Yahoo and tech stalwart IBM experimented with remote options only to realize that the project and
scuttle the project and told people to return to the office.
And I didn't know what the fuck that word was.
I noticed. I was like,
and told people to return to the office, right? So IBM and Yahoo, not small companies. They're established. They're established. They've been in this quite a bit. So they even said like, that's it. You got to come back to the office. And this is not the first time we've heard it. We've heard it from major companies throughout the weeks of like, no, people need to come back to the office. Performances are going down, like employee morale is going down, like things are becoming more stressful. Like There's just, and it could be something that's just going to take a little bit longer to adapt to, and that's something that we had a conversation this week in our company that's like, all right, we are having issues with this work from home model. But what does that mean? What are the issues? And pretty much 95% of the issues came down to communication. Yeah. It's difficult to communicate right now, and not necessarily because it's difficult to communicate, but for us, that this is not a common practice. We don't know the most efficient or the best way to communicate with somebody that's working from home on things that are getting done on a daily basis, and are changing on a daily basis. It makes it very hard to have those conversations. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, communication is like, and how do you solve that? To us, it's like, well, you got to come into the office. That's pretty much how that gets solved. So that was the whole article that I had on that. I hope you guys found it helpful. It's a interesting perspective for those of you that have jobs, for those of you that are business owner and you're thinking about, what am I going to do with employees? These are some things to keep in mind as you're hiring people. And then for real estate investors, it's like, it's based on the local market, right? So if you see that you're in a very affordable city, chances are, I don't think this hybrid work model is going away anytime soon. I think it's only going to get bigger. It just needs to get refined and tweaked and perfected. People are going to be more likely to move to more affordable cities that are still nice and still work somewhere where they're getting paid like they live there. You know what I mean? And now they're able to live a much stress-free lifestyle because it's like, well, look at this. Now I have more money left over.
Or the traffic. There's a lot.
Yeah. So any topics that you want to jump to? Because I was going to jump into McDonald's.
Yeah, go to McDonald's. That's the one I was thinking. I was kind of, when you sent me that, I was like, oh, man.
So for those of you that may not have heard, a McDonald's location has gotten so desperate for staff that it is offering a free iPhone to new workers. And I love how it starts off. Would you like fries with that? How about a free iPhone? So in an attempt to recruit and maintain new workers in a post-pandemic landscape, one McDonald's location is hoping to attract potential employees with quite the technological sound offer. In a viral tweet that has now generated over 200,000 likes, free iPhone.
Now hiring. Not hiring.
I said now.
You said not hiring.
Well,
now hiring free iPhone.
Okay. Yeah. Now hiring free iPhone after 6 months employment and meet employment criteria. So you're not getting an iPhone off the bat. You got to work for 6 months and meet the criteria. They will give you a free iPhone. So they could just, and somebody came out and said they could just offer livable wage instead of this theatrics. So we talked about this, and I really want somebody to let me know. So even if you're seeing a clip of this on TikTok or somewhere, I want you to comment below. Like, why would you expect a livable wage working at McDonald's? I don't understand that. McDonald's was never designed to be a livable wage job. It was a stepping stone. You understand? Like, that's, since I was a kid, McDonald's was always full of 15 and 16-year-olds. You understand? It's like, it's kids, always. It's a stepping stone. It's like the first job anybody can qualify for. Yeah. Why do you want a livable wage out of there? I don't know. I don't understand it. I would love to have a conversation. I'm not criticizing. I'm not, saying anything bad about the people. I'm just saying, like, it just, to me, it doesn't make sense. So this month, employees across 15 major cities in the U.S. staged a strike at selected McDonald's locations to fight the raising the minimum wage to $15 after learning that the fast food titan made $5 billion in profit last year. So it shows that McDonald's made $5 billion last year, and they want the minimum wage raised to $15. The company announced that it would begin to raise pay on an average of 10% for coworkers over the rest of the year, estimating that the average wage for company-owned restaurants employees would reach $15 per hour by 2024. However, this does not include employees who work in franchisee-owned restaurants, which account for a whopping 95% of McDonald's. So
yeah, or 5% of McDonald's we control, we're going to start raising those wages.
Yeah,
But that's also it's like, yeah, it's a franchisee model to where it's like, do they, like, what is that going to do to their business model? Saying like, oh, you have to pay $15 an hour.
Well, so this is where I think it's going to hit them. So you have many fast food restaurants like Wendy's and IHOP that have been doubling down on digital models and promotions that encourage customers to order online or through an app, decentralizing the typical model of one-on-one customer to employee interaction. McDonald's has said it's looking to hire 10,000 new employees across its company-owned restaurants in the next 3 months. So my thing is this, right? Like you hear this, and you hear Wendy's and IHOP doing that, and we've seen it with even more places. McDonald's is going to have to do something, right? If they raise their wages more, then they're going to have to raise the food cost, right? Because they won't be able to absorb that hit, right? Even though they save $5 billion in profit, what does that look like? Because people think, oh, $5 billion, you just put it right in your pocket. Not always. It could be, money that's rolling over to the following year. It could be a million things. It's just the way that taxes played out. That's what showed up as profit. For us, every year we show up like a certain amount of profit, and it's like, that's not in our pocket.
Yeah.
But that's how businesses work. But taking that into account, if you have Wendy's, IHOP, all these other companies that are going to start pretty much getting rid of employees, right? Automating as much of it as they can so they can keep competing at a low price. What the hell is McDonald's going to do? I mean, do you ever see a McDonald's going out of business?
I mean, anything can go out of business, but it's also one of the things that it's like, well, Amazon did it. It's like, yeah, Amazon doesn't have competition. There's nobody that can compete with Amazon that's like, well, we're going to go to $17 an hour, because it's like, who else is going to come out with that kind of infrastructure to compete with that? Where like fast food restaurants, food choices, you have a lot of options. You have a lot of choices to where it's like, they have to keep, there's a lot of competition to where it's like they have to do anything and everything they can to try to keep costs low, to where it's like, all right, they say we're even $1.
Yeah.
How many employees does McDonald's have across the entire nation? Says, nope, we need to give $1 raise to everybody across the board. Like, what does that do? And a lot of them, they're franchise models. They're individual people that own these, where they only own 5%. And they take a piece of 95%. Right. Where it's like, they know, like, if I raise those wages, it's going to be very hard. Like, restaurants don't operate on massive margins, to where like you take that massive hit going from 7, 10, whatever it may be, to state areas and say, no, everybody has to go to $15 an hour. Like, that is going to be very interesting. I mean, it would hurt the business model drastically, and we could really shake things up across a lot of them, to where like, they have to constantly be seeing what Burger King or IHOP or McDonald's or Wendy's, like all these other fast food places are doing to not even combat. It's just like work these issues out, because obviously they want to pay more wages, but they also have to watch their bottom line too. It's like they can't get beat out by the competition. Their business has to survive. Yeah. Like they have to answer to somebody, to where like says, oh, they should go out of business. Like, how many pensions funds own McDonald's? How many, how much money is being in the financial industry of retirees that are, you can't just like say, I want this Fortune 500 company. I mean, they're probably Fortune 50, I'd imagine, going out of business, because like that would hurt all the way across the entire market.
Well, I'm trying to do some quick research to see if I can pinpoint it. So far, what I'm seeing is Walmart has a market value of $93 billion. Amazon has a market value of 1.76 trillion. So 93 billion to 1.7 trillion, right? Amazon started way after Walmart. Walmart is, my thought is like, they're the closest competitor Amazon has.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's pretty much, and Walmart's tried the, 2-day free shipping and all the stuff, yet nobody really uses it as much as you use Amazon, right? You go to Amazon first. Always go to Amazon first. So you're looking at all this and you're saying, and yet Amazon is doing exactly that. They're being more competitive. They're offering higher wages. They're offering better benefits. They're offering schooling, right? Don't they offer like for you to learn certain trades and stuff like that? Like, didn't your brother learn like HVAC or something like that, right? So that's innovative. McDonald's has Wendy's, Burger King, Arby's. I mean, whether you like them or not, whatever, it's not the point. But the competitors are there. Whataburger in Texas,
Lots.
right?
Lots
The
of
competitors are there. So it's like, what are you going to do? The only thing that makes sense is not to pay your employees more, is to actually get rid of more employees and automate as much as you can. That's pretty much the best answer of fast food places, because if not, they become ridiculously expensive.
Well, I mean,
And
you just compare Amazon to Walmart. Like Walmart's a retail, where like the efficiencies of Amazon. Amazon started innovating as far as like getting employees and putting people or automating and getting machines to do as much work as possible. You walk inside one of those warehouses and it's like the automation they have with those warehouses that it's like they're football size fields of just products, and you got robots running around where Walmart had to have trucks drive to a warehouse, the warehouse drive to the distributor, people unload it, and people physically goes pack all their stores.
Yep.
So we're like, you just look at like, what's the market paying for now? 1.7 trillion versus 93 billion. It's like that. I mean, given Amazon owns all kinds of other stuff too that attributes to that, but it's also like they're able to distribute so many more products and expand so much faster than what Walmart can today, because Walmart depended on physical retail stores and locations.
Yep.
Which is just crazy to see. That's like those two juggernauts of like Walmart's not small. I mean, but you just look at the market cap sizes of them, and it's like, man, they're really gonna be going head to head. It's like, can they? But who's gonna win that? Like the tail of the take of the two.
Battle of the Titans.
Battle of the Titans, I guess you can look at. You got the new hip fit guy going against the old school entrenched like strong company of Walmart. Like what do they do?
I mean, we can always use the same example of Netflix and Blockbuster. You know, Blockbuster was a freaking juggernaut. Netflix came, put them out of business. They would not adapt. You know what I mean? They did not want to change anything.
Well, I mean, look at Sears too. It was like
Sears, yeah.
Sears, Kmart, Walmart, like those were all big like retailers of like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then the tech came along, and like Sears went out of business. Kmart, I don't know if it still exists. I haven't seen one in forever to where like those big box retailers don't exist anymore. Walmart's been able to hold on and really kind of keep things going for a while and be able to shift just because of their capitalization, the way they've invested, but can they keep going forever?
So as we talk about these juggernauts and all this, I want to hear this article that you have. Amazon did something. What did they do? What are you doing?
Well, it's one of the things also Amazon, it's like they're 1.7, why are they worth 1.7 trillion is because like looking at like Walmart, we talk about like they're in the business of selling products. And that's really about it. Amazon's got their streaming service, their cloud service, their all the different business that they own for all different types of things. I mean, they got the products, the Alexas, the Fire Sticks, all the stuff they go on. So a very diversified product line where it's like, man, is there anything Amazon doesn't do? And now Amazon buys MGM Studios for Amazon to buy MGM Studios for $8.45 billion. The funny thing was like their stock when they announced it didn't even move. It's like
Amazon stock.
Yeah, they're like, makes sense. Like usually when you had like companies make these big mergers, stock prices would start fluctuating rapidly. Like theirs moved less than like 1% when it was announced. So it's already kind of like bit into their stock price. But Amazon said Wednesday it will acquire MGM Studios for $8.45 billion, making its boldest move yet into the entertainment industry and turbocharging its streaming ambitions. The deal is the second largest acquisition in Amazon history behind the $13.7 billion purchase of Whole Foods in 2017. The real financial value behind this deal is the treasure trove of intellectual property in the deep catalog that will plan to reimagine and develop together with MGM's talented team. Amazon has been willing to make big investments on video content as a strategy to buoy Prime memberships, which now surpasses 200 million globally. It spent 11 billion on video and music content last year, up from 7.8 billion in 2019. CEO Jeff Bezos has argued that these investments reinforce Amazon's flywheel effect, in which it attracts more Prime subscribers who in turn tend to spend more on their site. And my question with that is, at what point does Amazon become too big and have too much power across too many industries?
Oh, we're past that point. I don't think that it's at what point. I think Amazon is a titan within its rights where it's like you can't touch Amazon. Like the amount of people they employ, the amount of services they provide, the amount of tentacles they got into all of the economy, everything. It's like, yeah, Amazon is here to stay, not for now, but it's gonna be I think it's like slowly they'll probably end up absorbing Walmart. You know what I mean? Because I think Walmart won't be able to keep up anymore because it'll just be too easy to be an Amazon Prime member and just do all your shopping at Amazon because they bought Whole Foods, right? Last year, the year before, whatever, they bought Whole Foods. So, and I believe they had bought them for what, like 13 billion?
17. Yeah, well, I just said it in the article. What was it?
You said it?
Yeah, it's in the article. They 13.7.
Okay, so they bought them for $13 billion, right? Whole Foods. They just bought MGM for $8 billion. So you control food, you control now entertainment, streaming. They're bringing on, I believe the biggest things are going to be like the James Bonds, Rocky. You're bringing on big series, right? Things that
That's what
MGM
made
creates
the
a lot of
deal so
blockbusters.
juicy was the intellectual property that MGM owns, and I didn't
Right.
copy that portion, but they said like some 17,000 titles or something like
They're
that.
they already have rights to NFL games,
Yeah,
right? Basketball
2022,
games.
they have the exclusive rights for Thursday Night Football.
So you're looking at all that, and it's like, what area of your life does Amazon not control or not have their hands in?
So since you
Yeah.
believe that monopolies are good for economies, do you think this is good for an overall economy to
I
have
never
one
said
company?
monopolies are good for economy. I said over government regulation isn't good for economy. You know what I mean?
Does this start? Do you think Amazon's going to start really infringing on? Because they've been in the news, and the next article is about antitrust laws. Do you think Amazon does need to tread carefully as far as how far they try to spread, with the risk of being broken up?
I believe again, wholeheartedly, is the free market is always going to do what they need to do, right? They're always going to do what's right, and even Amazon, they haven't gotten this big by being stupid, right? They control so much, yet they're still raising their wages. They're still giving more benefits to their employees. They're still doing better services at cheaper prices. You know what I mean? That's like they're not right now. They haven't shown that they have any malicious intent or anything to do something bad.
Do they? The next article says that they do.
Oh, okay. So let's get into it.
But so with
Ooh,
that,
gossip.
saying like you're saying they don't show to do anything bad. I was like, well, the DC Attorney General sues Amazon on antitrust grounds, alleges it illegally raises prices. So the Washington D.C. Attorney General Carl Rassin announced Tuesday he's suing Amazon on antitrust grounds, alleging the company practices have unfairly raised prices for consumers and suppressed innovation. Rayson is seeking to end what he alleges Amazon's illegal use of price agreements to edge out competition. The suit asks the court to stop what it calls Amazon's ability to harm competition through a variety of remedies as needed, which could include structural relief, often referred to as a form of breakup. The lawsuit filed in D.C. Superior Court alleges Amazon illegally maintained monopoly powers by using contract provisions to prevent third-party sellers on its platform from offering their products at lower prices on other platforms. Until 2019, Amazon included a clause in that document referred to as a price parity provision, which prohibited sellers from offering their products on a competitor's online marketplace at a lower price than what other products would have sold for Amazon. Amazon quickly removed that provision in March 2019 amid growing antitrust scrutiny. According to the complaint, even after Amazon removed its price parity provision for its agreements with third-party sellers, it added a nearly identical clause referring to it as a fair pricing policy. The fair pricing policy enables Amazon to impose sanctions on a seller that offers their products for a lower price on a competing online marketplace. Thoughts? So basically, it said, "Oh shit, that is kind of a antitrust aspect. We probably shouldn't do it. So let's take that out and put this other one worded differently." Because like when you dealt with as much of attorneys as we have, or talked to, it's like words mean certain things and worded a certain way.
Yeah.
To where that one attorney's be like, this means the exact same. When I look at it, it's like you can impose sanctions on somebody if they offer you their product on a different platform for a lower price. How is that not the same of saying you can't offer this product at a lower price on their platform? It's like, yeah, I get it. It's like, well, they still can. We just can impose sanctions. So you're making them not their product. They basically saying you only have Amazon. If you try to do business over here,
of course, they want exclusivity.
Yeah.
right? You're not being forced to put it on Amazon.
Yeah, no, I get it, but
You could spend the extra money and create your own marketing funnel and create your own Shopify store and create all of that to bring traffic to your site, and you sell whatever price you want.
Yeah.
You want to tap into the marketing Amazon has. You want to tap into their platform. You want to tap into all this stuff. They want exclusivity, right?
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, we're going to bring all this awareness to you, and then you're going to offer it cheaper in your website. It's like, you know.
Yeah, but I said like when Amazon grows as large as Amazon's gotten, you suppress any form of competition with that. Like it makes sense. I get it. For like a small, like I want exclusivity to work with you because I'm doing all this work over here. But when you control over 50% of the market or something like that, now what those rules that made sense when you were smaller, now it's like, well, now those rules are actually hurting businesses and hurting competition and allowing you this monopolistic style of position in the market.
You have other, where I keep going back to the free market, right? Then you have other massive companies like Facebook continuing to build up their store place, right? Facebook has pretty much been developing, like you have the marketplace, but they're developing more of like a store, kind of like an Amazon model, where not everything needs to be local anymore. You can find local stuff that somebody's reselling, but you can also find brand new stuff that somebody's selling and shipping, just like you would anywhere else, right? So Facebook is now getting into that space as well. They're seeing what Amazon's doing and everything. And if Amazon gets too out of control, Facebook's going to be like, well, then come list with us. We have the traffic. We have the billions of people. You know, we'll put your products in front of everybody. We have the marketing. Amazon,
it'd be interesting to see how that works, because like I get on any kind of Facebook marketplace and it's trash stuff that happens on there. And like it's just a
because
pain.
it's like everything, right? It's forming, it's all this shit. But regardless, it's going in that direction.
Yeah.
And that's where I go back to regulations. My issues with regulation, again, it's not that the intent is bad. The issue is that the regulation comes out. Let's say it fixes this, but then it creates 10 other problems for everybody else. Unintended consequences that every regulation has. And now that regulation is in place. Now they got to get another regulation to regulate the first regulation. And then another one to regulate. You get what I'm saying? Where it gets to a point where it's like, that I think stifles innovation and growth much more than Amazon trying something and then getting smacked by somebody else. You know, and having to modify because then the people don't like it. And then the people start shying away. And then the people start going somewhere else, right? Or marketing gets more creative. So you don't have to go to Amazon because, well, if I search, you know, I'm going to find these people and they offer. So I think this kind of stuff creates even more competition and innovation because it forces people to be like, screw you, Amazon. We're not doing that shit. We'll figure it out some other way. You understand? And they will. I mean, you look at Facebook, like you said, Facebook, oh, they're controlling everything. TikTok came out, they're crushing it. You know, Facebook came out with Reels to compete. It's not doing as well as TikTok is. TikTok is still crushing it, and it keeps growing. You understand? So it's like, it only created, yes, it stifled some half-brained innovation, but some really good innovation like TikTok was, it didn't stop it. It couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of my argument again, I guess, against that kind of government regulation and all that. It's like it always goes too much.
I agree, it does go too far, but it's also one of the things like as Amazon grows, it's like as a company grows, like those are real issues, and if you keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, eventually, yes, you are going to get infringe on antitrust laws, and you are going to get broken up to where you have to realize like. You can grow, but you got to be careful of what policies you do put in place from when you started to where you are now, to where like these issues, to where like Amazon now says you can't sell at another place or we've imposed sanctions on you. And it's like, well, now you are stifling innovation. So it's like, well, maybe you should modify your policies to where you don't have these kind of issues where the Attorney General of Washington, D.C. sues you for antitrust laws. It's like, man, you got to play that ground as you grow to get a certain size and scale.
Let's look at that too. The Attorney General of Washington, D.C., does he know anything about business? You know what I mean? Like, does he know how the economy works? Because they say they throw the stifle innovation out so quickly, and it's like, do you actually have any data backing that up that it is actually stifling innovation? Like, do you have any actual data to show that?
Of course you do. You just look through history. Like you look at AT&T, you look at Standard Oil, you look across the history, the companies that have gone broken up, that it was good for the economy once those companies were broken up.
You're using a handful of companies versus like all the companies in history.
Well, that's what I said. They're suing
like you
him
look
based
at what
on
was
that.
it? I think it's I don't know if it's Procter and Gamble or somebody like that. That when you actually look behind the curtain, they own like all of the major food brands that you ever consume everywhere. They own like that's a true monopoly in the whole food industry. Control everything. Nobody's bitching about that.
Yeah.
Right. So this is nothing new, and nobody's broken them up. They're still getting bigger and acquiring more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and it still hasn't stifled innovation. You have the organic
Well, that's
side.
what I
You
said,
have
because
all this other
obviously
side.
they haven't put policies in place that infringe on the line of government regulation and antitrust laws. Or it's like you got to
But
tread
he's
carefully.
saying they are. Just because
Well,
Amazon is saying you can't resell on your site for a higher price, they're not saying you can't resell on your site. They're saying you can't resell on your site for a higher price. You
Lower
understand?
price.
For a lower price. So where you're competing with the price on Amazon, that's like, well, then why would you? Why would you do that? Why not? Why? If you're pricing it, yes, I know you're gonna get more money because you're doing that.
Yeah.
But build a brand on Amazon, then pull it off Amazon. You pull it off of Amazon. You build like I bought products on Amazon, and then when I get the product or whatever, or I get whatever I buy, it comes with like, hey, for some free shit, go to my website, sign up to. They captured me now. They have my information. They have everything.
I understand 100%,
So,
but that's also one of the
I
things.
think
like,
this is just bitching and moaning that I don't feel like it has any base, because it's like, oh, they're stopping and innovate. Stop bitching because they made everything easy and they want to make more money. No, that's screwed up. Don't use them.
Yeah.
Well, that's just mean.
And that's the
Okay.
thing. Is like you got to be careful as a company as you're growing the policies you put in place. As like if Amazon took that out, would their business really be affected that much? Highly doubt it, because Amazon is as big as they are. Or it's just like, hey, you got to understand. I think as you grow, it's like there is a government regulation out there, and it's there for a purpose. And it's like you got to make sure you don't become the target of something like that. And this isn't new. Amazon's been in the limelight, or all tech companies have been in the limelight for quite some time now, of some of the stuff that they've been pulling recently. That, hey, antitrust is coming to where like the big run up of the stock markets capitalized these so few tech companies so well that they've diversified into every other part of the economy under their umbrella, to where it's like Procter and Gamble. Okay, they own food.
No,
They own other, but consumer. They own a lot of consumer products, a lot of consumer brands, and things like that. Where like tech is not, or a big tech is now involved in cars. It's in studios. It's in distribution. It's in space exploration.
I get it.
Or like that's where you say you got to be careful on how far you tread. Like I get it's the job of a company to expand, but
innovation isn't always a home run. You understand? Like sometimes you're gonna innovate and it's gonna pan out terribly, like that freaking SUV that Tesla tried to come out with, that futuristic freaking
Cybertruck.
Yeah, that nasty thing.
Didn't it still come? I thought it wasn't even supposed to come out yet. Like
I don't know, but that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes you're innovating, and it looks like a turd, right? But not everything's gonna be a home run, and you try it, and then, but like my thing is like to criminalize somebody so quickly without giving them a chance to to not giving a chance to really see, does it produce that kind of effect, or is it producing a different kind of effect? Like I said, they don't allow you to lower your prices on your website. Okay, cool. Even if you price it at the same price, you're still making more on your website because you're selling it at the same price of Amazon, but you're keeping more. You're keeping on the whole money, right? Or you innovate. So now when you sell your package, give them a little bump up just to sign up to your website to do all this.
It's the point they're being sued for this. It doesn't mean that they, and that's said in the court of law, you have to prove that they are illegally doing this, that it actually is hurting. You have to make a case for it.
100, yeah.
And so it's like they're being sued for it. So it's like it's not me like, and that's a great thing about our system is like somebody like government can come in and sue the private sector for these issues, but now we have a complete different system, our judicial system, that comes in and regulates between that.
We know what the pain in the ass is of being sued, even if you're right.
Yeah, but I mean that's just
now you got to spend all this time, all this effort, all this money fighting what could be a frivolous lawsuit, and it's like, okay, yeah, you lost, but I still wasted all this effort, time, and money biting your dumb ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, can we use, can we wait to have some actual evidence where this is?
Well, that's what
and I'm
I
not
said.
saying they don't,
Yeah, that's the point of it, though, is like there is one side that feels both sides feel they're right.
Yeah.
That's why the practices are in place. And now you have the system in there to prove who is right. And
Yeah.
that's why you can't just say, you're doing this wrong. It's like they have court cases, they have evidence, they have other situations that show that for their case, it's like you are illegally hurting the private sector this way. And that is now the job of the judicial system to come out and say, like, you are or you aren't.
Your Honor, it's all hearsay. Bullshit. Contempt of court. Anyway.
I don't know where that came from, but all right.
I wanted to touch on this article real quick. I was reading an article, Warren Buffett bets on modular construction. So the Oracle of Omaha is making a contrarian bet on modular construction. So MyTech, a Missouri construction company owned by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, is launching a new modular building venture. The Wall Street Journal reported that the startup will partner with New York City-based firm Danny Foster & Architecture on this venture. The goal to build rooms for hotels and apartment buildings in factories before sending them off to construction sites to be stacked. MyTech plans to invest tens of millions of dollars into the initiative and hopes to start working on its first projects at the beginning of next year. This isn't the first time someone has tried to disrupt the prefab building business. Katera, a Silicon Valley startup with SoftBank's backing, has been seeking to move more of its construction work to factories to reduce the middlemen. The company's projects, however, have suffered from delays and cost overruns. MyTech says that its model can avoid the cost overruns and delays that have become associated with modular construction because it will ship manufactured building parts along with the instructions for the project as opposed to building entire rooms off-site. General contractors would then construct the rooms with instructions from MyTech. Recently, the prefab startups Vive and Factory OS have received funding from investors on the Tel Aviv stock market and market exchange and Google, respectively. So they're pretty much becoming the IKEA of houses now. I mean, they're gonna ship you a house in a box and with a million parts, and you gotta piece it together now. But it's interesting because this is not the first time we've heard about it. We have a friend of ours, Austin, that he's partnering with some people and doing pretty much the same thing. The difference with him is that he is building the whole room, the whole house in the warehouse and ships it out. And then you kind of like, you do it like Legos and you stack it. You got to have the foundation and all those things poured and you stack it from there. So these guys are saying they're going to make it much more cost effective because they're going to prefab the whole house, but send it in pieces. So I imagine like the walls and everything is going to just, exactly like IKEA furniture. It's all going to come in in a nice little package. And then you just got to start piecing all the...
Yeah, I was listening to this morning on Kathy Fedke. She did a little 5-minute spiel on this as well, talking about that. And it's like they've been running into a lot of trouble with labor unions because you look at construction and like especially in the Northeast from where you're at, it's like it's labor unions for sure. Any kind of mass production, it's labor unions for sure. And to where like trying to create this model that you're going to distribute and disrupt across a nationwide, like every city, every municipality, every state like has its own codes that are all adhered to. Like you have this national building code, but now you have all these small codes that can go further and beyond what the national code is. So it's like, how are you going to be able to adhere to all of that from one central location? So we're like, you're talking millions of different, hundreds of thousands of different codes that you'd have to build for certain areas and certain aspects to where it's like, you couldn't say, like, we're going to build these homes in Texas. Like, well, Austin has different regulations than San Antonio. Dallas has different. The counties have different. We're like, how do you go about building in these different areas for all these different codes and these different regulations? Because just like we talked about, like in the county, yeah, you can throw some up there because there's nowhere near the inspection process than there is in the city. So we're like, okay, you can't build in the city. So
I think also that's why they're targeting hotels and apartment buildings. Because I think with the houses, what's the problem that we face, right? That we submit our plans, everything is good, everything, yay, we're good, and then all of a sudden, you have a stupid neighbor that comes out and starts crying, and then they're like, oh, you got to bring your roof height a little bit, and you got to do this little bump out, and you got to bring this in a little bit. So if you had the plans already being manufactured, now it's an issue because it's like, hey, this house is being manufactured at these specs, but now all of a sudden the specs have been changing because of the neighborhood. But I think when you're building a hotel or an apartment, that's not really the case. I don't think you're going to have those kind of tweaks and those kind of issues. That's like, I think once you get the go ahead to build, that's why when we drive everywhere, why is it that we see these buildings go up so much faster than any of our houses? You know what I mean? And they're building a massive building and it's like, boom, and you're talking about like from stick frame all the way to like it's being leased, right? It's moved in ready, everything's to go. And you're saying they had to have inspection periods. They've had to have, yeah, but it's different for them than it is for a single family home. So I think that's maybe how they're battling that. I think the regulations and everything for a hotel, for an apartment complex, in apartment buildings is perhaps not the same thing that we are having to deal with in the residential space. And that was just something that, with our buddy that he's doing this, like I was actually thinking about. I was like, how's that going to work? Because we've had it even like mid-project. Like we have stick frame, everything, and all of a sudden they start changing their mind on the damn windows. And it's like, well, if we hired this person, this company to pre-build the house and the house is pre-built and we're putting it together, now they give us a problem with the windows and we got to change the shit. It's like, damn, now this became a real issue because this house, everything was already framed to go together. Now we got to start breaking that up to modify it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think for single family, I think it's more of a challenge versus hotels and apartments. I don't know. I've never built a hotel and apartment yet, so I don't know. I'd be curious.
Yeah, I don't know either. Like, I do know inspections are strict when it comes to commercial buildings, and I've even heard more so than residential. But it's like you have a lot more people involved. You have a lot more higher paid people, more educated people doing these processes to where it's not so fragmented as single family construction. To where like we're an individual one-off builder that's building a house. Like that is completely different than a production builder. Because you look at some of these neighborhoods, how fast they build neighborhoods. And like they have all the same inspections we do, but they know the process and it runs through it to where it's like they have somebody that's an inspector. It's basically there every single day going through every single house. And they have somebody that manages every single one of those.
They're not building like in a historic district. They're not building in, where they know that they're not going to have all these stupid guidelines, regulations, and all this crap. They're more focused on the outskirts where it's less regulated, there's nothing, and they're buying a whole amount of acreage and they're putting up a whole subdivision. So it's like, you build one spec home, everything's good, all ass, you know what I mean? After that, everything stays as it is. So I mean, it's interesting. But as we start getting closer to the end, I did also want to remind you guys is I interviewed local real estate investor Seth Teal of Somos Real Estate, and he's actually on one of the city boards that we've been talking to and everything as we get through our build process and all the headaches we're going through. So that episode is going to come out in 2 weeks for Tips for the Pro. So make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel to not miss it. We talked a lot about a lot of different things about the market. He expects actually home prices to be coming down because of the way the market is acting right now. So very, very good interview. Very interesting interview is going to be coming out on again in 2 weeks. So if you want to make sure not to miss it, then you're going to want to be a part of our text community. So text us at CWTJ 210-794-9898. You can find it in the chat and description below. Text us, be a part of the community. We share a ton of cool stuff with you guys and only you guys. So make sure you jump on that. But before we wrap up, I did want to touch on this because I talked about it at the beginning. And we're shifting gears from Elon Musk to Ray Dalio. Now, Ray Dalio, Billionaire, is coming out in support of Bitcoin, saying that he owns some Bitcoins and he rather own Bitcoins over bonds. So Billionaire Ray Dalio, Bridgewater Associates, has the largest asset under management of any hedge fund, with assets estimating at $140 billion. Naturally, much of Ray Dalio's investments philosophy may sound familiar to the Bitcoin faithful. And this is from Ray himself, most of what people think is money is really credit, and it does disappear. As implied by this, a big part of the deleveraging process is people discovering that much of what they thought was their wealth isn't really there. And he wrote that back in 2008. So Dalio backs investment in Bitcoin rather than a bond because he believes this strategy could lead the government to reduce its control over the monetary system. The statement is quite surprising because his $140 billion fund held substantial investments in government bonds and treasuries. Dalio, who believes Bitcoin's greatest risk is its success, says he owns some Bitcoin but didn't say how much. Early this year, Ray Dalio expressed his intention of investing in cryptocurrency to protect investors against currency devaluation. Dalio said in a CoinDesk conference that cryptocurrency can work as the best store of value in a volatile environment, and he has expressed concerns over the Treasury's behavior towards digital currencies. He claims that the U.S. government could put strict regulations, controls, or might completely ban cryptocurrencies due to increasing competition with Treasury bonds. So one of the great things I think as a worry is the government has the capacity to control Bitcoin or the digital currencies, to control Bitcoin or the digital currencies. They know where they are and they know what's going on, he said. So while he is in Bitcoin because he feels that it makes the most sense, right? It feels like he's saying the same thing that we have. You got to protect yourself against the devaluation of the dollar. He looks at Bitcoin almost like gold. He looks at it as a protection of the value.
Well, it's also the thing we talked about too. Like, what is the biggest risk? Is the government stepping in and controlling it? They're like, oh, they can't control it. I'm not gonna hedge my entire wealth on the fact that U.S. government can't come in and control something. When like, that's one of the things I've learned. I just study economies. Like, never like even thing we looked at. Like, oh, this economy is gonna crash. Like, well, the Fed saved it. Well, that's fake. Well, they've been saving it for what? When does the old become the new? Now, where it's like they've been doing it for 14 years. So everything's inflated. Like, everything shifts. Like, I'm not going to bet against the Fed and the U.S. government to be able to like just come unhinged and lose all of its faith and power because of one new technology comes along and wipes out what the last 250 years of entrenched ability into the financial systems.
So you're saying that the U.S. economy, the U.S. government can control Bitcoin?
To the effects that everyone says that Bitcoin can overthrow the dollar. That's where I kind of go at. It's like when you look at the amount of trade and everything, the organizations to where like you come across, like if companies band together, countries band together around, it was like, yeah, we're not going to use it. It becomes a black market.
So that point that you're just hitting right there is what I was thinking is the only way I believe the U.S. can actually do something detrimental to Bitcoin is if they say they come together with other major countries in the world and say, hey, look, if this shit hurts us, it's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
You know, either we come together and we start battling cryptocurrency or it's going to hurt us all.
Oh, drastically.
Now, that being said, what's stopping China and Russia getting together and saying, F you, we're going to back crypto?
And that's
to purposely, right? To have that battle. Mm-hmm. Because right now it's like, you know, yeah, we don't have wars anymore of like World War and stuff like that, but we are having currency wars. These countries are fighting continuously with interest rates, with money, with printing, with borrowing. That's their war right now. That's who they're using to fight these wars. You know what they're using. So it's
there was an interesting conversation I heard from the Rebel Capitalist with Peter Schiff. And Peter Schiff take him everything he says with a grain of salt. But you just look at what this pandemic's done is the U.S. is still a massive creditor nation. And it's gotten even bigger consumer nation. And our deficits that the previous administration was harping on have now gotten even worse as far as our trade deficits with everyone else. Like, we're consuming the world's products and our money is going somewhere else, loading everything up with debt from other places.
Right.
To where, like, at what point do they shift and say, you know what, we're just going to sell to our own people now? Like, we don't need the U.S. to be the consumer nation of the world. But there's nothing that does stop that. But right now, it's like the U.S. dollar is still the reserve currency in the world, and it is still used in the vast, and it's not even close to number 2 as far as the number or the value of the market that is traded with those currencies.
Yeah.
Where if the U.S. dollar just comes out and says, we're the Treasury, the Fed, the United States says you can't transact with dollars if the U.S. is involved via cryptocurrencies. Like, what is that going to do?
Yeah.
And it makes it very hard to where it's like, I think if it does overthrow, it's becoming too much, I call it black market power that governments and municipality and governments around the world, I think, could band together, 2 of them. And like, even if the U.S. and China or U.S. and Europe came through and said, we're not going to back this. And it's like, you're going to create all kinds of currency issues. So I think that is something that is the risk. And he even says it is like the greatest risk to Bitcoin is Bitcoin's success.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I go back to Amazon. The greatest threat to Amazon is Amazon's own success, because you start infringing on too many other parts and too many people band against you, because now it's one against the many. Well, it comes like you got 75 companies and then Amazon. Well, the government's going to go towards the people and the where the, not necessarily where the money's at, but where they're getting their votes and power from.
So now that brings up a different question in my head then. So taking Amazon into consideration, right? You had Amazon working off of the mind of Jeff Bezos, right?
Yeah.
So his innovation, call it morale, everything, whatever you want to call it, was leading the growth of Amazon. Now with Jeff Bezos stepping down, he's no longer the CEO or anything of Amazon. He's stepping down. Do you believe the new CEO versus the general consensus of Bitcoin is what's going to be more powerful? Because like, I think Jeff Bezos is a smart businessman, where if he wouldn't get too greedy, or he would turn everybody against him. What he wants is more people to love Amazon, not hate Amazon, right? Because it makes his brand, as is shown, stronger. You know, if you start turning people against you, eventually they will put you out. You understand? So but that was Jeff Bezos. We don't know what the new, the new policies are going to be moving forward for that. But crypto, on the other hand, there isn't one person running it that we know of. It's more of like a general consensus. So like with something like that, I'd just be curious as to like, does it really compare? What's going to happen with crypto as governments step in more? You know, Randy was saying that China is creating its own crypto now. So I don't know. All that being said, I still believe, like everything, crypto is a chip on the board.
Well, it's also one of the things, like, I think wrong. Like, it's not cryptocurrencies. I think digital currencies. Well, I mean, there's a difference between digital currencies and, like, I think that's the wrong name where people think it's like it's a currency. It's not a currency. Like, it doesn't have the liquidity. It's an asset like gold. I think it is more like, yes, it has some more currency aspects than gold does, but you
can spend it better than gold.
It's easier to spend than gold is, and convert into dollars and on a more efficient, quicker scale. Yeah. But it's also one of the things that's not accepted everywhere. Too volatile of something to where, like, I mean, there are some people that believe in it and are converting their wealth and saying, I want to be paid in cryptocurrency and stuff like that. Yeah. And that, I mean, you're early adopters, but it's like, just like recently, like we saw it almost drop, like, what was it, got as high as 60, now it's hovering down in the 30s. Yeah. So it's like, it's drastically down. So why would a company say, I'm switching to all of my money via cryptocurrencies and digital? Like, it's too volatile to be for like a finance.
I think even you look at
banking and debt,
and you look at Dalio, like even his investment strategy, he's not an all in on anything. No, you know, I think as a smart investor, you should never be all in on the damn thing. You know, you should be diversified. You know, you should be, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there. You know, what are two investments that are the complete opposite of each other? Invest a little bit in each one, because if one blows up, the other will come down, and vice versa, right? So I think as an investor, you need to diversify. You need to be able to be spread out. Like we heard that one idiot that he's 96% in Bitcoin. I'm like, my God, You know what I mean? Like, I wonder until when. I wonder until when he's going to be that 96%.
God,
Because the level of risk is
well, just right now, it's like
insane.
you almost lost 50% of your wealth in the matter of the last month.
Yeah.
Like it's like, well, you can see those wild swings. Well, everyone says that when Bitcoin's on a high, but how's that feel when it just dropped to half? And it's like, shit, my wealth just dropped in half, and now I'm like trying to convert to dollars to use that, and then trying to track the tax implications of that. He's 96% in Bitcoin. Like every time you need to buy something, you got to track that for taxes, for losses and gains, and pay taxes based on all that crap. Like, oh, that'd be a nightmare. But maybe he's so wealthy that his 4%'s like $1 million or something. I don't know.
And another topic, if you do live in San Antonio, you want to make sure to join one of our property tours. I'm going to be doing one today of a project that we just finished. We're going to walk through, go over the numbers, go over everything. In order to do that, just text us, property tour, to 210-794-9898. And I usually put it out, and the first couple people to respond are the ones that come along, because we can't have large group of people. This house has been sold, so we gotta respect the property. So pretty much I'll put out how many people are to come, and the first ones to respond can tag along. So make sure you check that out. And with that, we're gonna wrap up this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you did, give us that thumbs up. Helps us out tremendously. And remember, we are on audio podcasts as well, so you can search any of your podcast app and listen to us while you're on the go. With that being said, thank you all for watching, and